games where they were on height. They won 2 games, 2 victory royales, and they didn't even hold height for a single part of any of those games because that's not in their play style. If you watch them at all, they're a very low to mid team as well. And overall points, 235. Like, the winners from last season on the same format in EU had 295. So it's like they already have 235, 60 points behind that. It's nuts.
And we saw a team get a 60-point game yesterday, right? With Diox's trio. So it's not impossible for them to just total last season's point final winning record after game 1. Like, that would be absolutely insane. But I'm really excited to see how these guys do, because I think a lot of people look at them and go, this is the low ground team. He talks about them not having height in any of those games and winning games from height. You know, that's not something we see commonly in the EU. We've seen great low ground teams in other regions. This is sort of the one team that people go, could be that great low ground team in EU. And they're finally showing that off in this competition. Really going to set, you know, a big example for a lot of the other teams. Now, anybody that wants to play low ground will be bothering these guys, right? And rightfully so, they're so good.
And I think, you know, I've talked about the story arc for them across the entire year because they are one of the only teams who've had that story arc, like we said earlier. But the story arc just this season has been great because they've looked not good, right? Well, you know, I think we'll both happily say that they've not looked good this season when we come to their qualifiers so far. When I was looking at the predictions of them, they were contested, obviously, originally, but I also didn't even put them in my top 10. They today, and well, yesterday, sorry, have turned up. They've showed up. They've put on an absolute show and shown, like, you know, we shouldn't have doubted this team at all. We should have put them up. We should have known that in every single set lobby finals like this, like, they are going to perform to the level that we should expect.
Absolutely. Let's get a bigger picture here. Let's take a look at the standings as we prepare for these games. So remember, we got another 6 foot ahead of us. But yeah, just to kind of put it in numbers, a 60-point lead starting off the day, right? You look from top to bottom, first to 10th. That is over 100 points difference. All right. So there's no doubt in my mind at the end of today, they will absolutely be potentially in your top 5, right? I feel like if everything were to go terribly wrong, I couldn't see them outside of top 5. But, you know, I want to see them continue I'm just like, there's literally no way to properly quantify this because we've never seen this happen before, you know? Like, it's so weird, but I'm like all for it. Let's see more of that.
Fortnite fan, when Zeke is struggling for words, you know something is really off the chain, right? Like, you know something is off the scale. It's just, it's a dazzling performance, right? It's the kind of thing that you don't see very often. These kind of things come around, you know, very rarely, it seems like. These sort of historic performances, you know, I don't know if it eclipses. I know yesterday I was getting a bit excited and I'm saying, oh, this is similar to Booga at the World Cup, you know, different stakes, different scenarios, but this is definitely the kind of performance that, you know, is in the history books. People will talk about this many seasons to come because it is, you know, it's just so insane.
Look, I don't want to be that guy, but I'm going to be that guy, okay?
Oh, no.
Season, I kind of like being that guy sometimes. Chapter 2, season 5. They were first, but only by a margin, 4 points, right? Day 2, the whole game plan switched up for other teams, and they ended up managing to push around where Kami and Antique were. Now, in previous seasons, their split was way wider, right? So players could easily more take advantage of that. I don't want to see that happen this time, right? From Diox's team, who's in second so far, like I mentioned earlier, a 17 elimination victory royale will be the difference between those two, right? And these guys absolutely are capable of that. It's like, you know, when you think about, 17 elimination victory royale, you're like, that doesn't seem like a very feasible gameplay. But these guys yesterday had one game where they came third with 16 elims and another game where they won with 15. So when we're talking about that kind of gap between them, although Kami City Teak are so far ahead, if they blunder in a single game, like, Diox's team 100% can catch up.
No, most definitely. These guys were incredible yesterday. The big question mark around those guys, though, is, of course, yesterday they had the hot hand. When you have a team that's getting games like that, 16 elim games, 15 elim games, it's all good and well doing that yesterday, but you now need to come through and do that again today. Not gonna lie, I think they have the ability to do it. I know you've watched some of their games recently. They seem fundamentally incredibly strong. They seem to be well prepared. They seem to have a plan. But of course, will they have that same hot hand? Will they have the ability to roll through in any given game and just get, you know, near a 20 elim game? Who knows?
I want to add, like, I think these guys are really fundamentally sound, right? Like, when you watch teams, and in particular watch the Tarper and Endgame, and you watch how good the positions get put into, like, man, this team is really impressive. And it's one of the reasons why they can just keep fragging out repeatedly and repeatedly, right? Because they're in the positions to do so. So, you know, there's a lot of memes about them going around right now, but these guys are great, and they're really showing it right now. In 5th place, like, we have to talk about also Karachi Stormy right in 2nd, are coming back champions from last season. They won 2 games and are in 5th so far. So, like, you know, all of the points necessarily haven't been there in the other games, but like, you can't say that they're not off to like a really good form on day number 1.
Yeah, let's not sugarcoat things. People came into this, even with them being the reigning champions, sort of going, don't know if they can really do good like they did last season. Not sure if they've really been working hard enough to be able to retain the AXA champion. But they've come in and they've proven people wrong, to be fair. They've really impressed me thus far. You know, they could have been a bit higher up in the standings if a couple other things went their way. You know, sometimes you do need a bit of luck on your side, but they definitely are a lot more, you know, sort of fundamentally sound per se than I thought they would be. A lot of cohesion, the teamwork is still on point. Loving how well these guys have performed thus far. And look, you know, will they be able to catch up to Cami City and Teak? Not impossible, gonna be really hard, but definitely a team to watch out for in terms of pushing into the top 3, really reaching that upper echelon of teams. Another team that I'm really excited about though, Resub, a team that I think could be a threat to Cami City and Teak on low ground, Floki, Clement, and the Sipsos. Right? This is a team who, you know, they won the first game yesterday, right? And, you know, very impressive stuff. Definitely a team that was always gonna do well in some capacity, right? But when it comes to low ground teams in the EU, we obviously talk about Cami City and Teak being one of the best ones. This one would also be the next one that people sort of refer to, right? This is a team that very much dominate mid and low ground, and you know, if these guys are having a really good day on low ground, that could be, you know, a bit of a factor into maybe Cami City and Teak not being able to dominate the low ground the way they did yesterday.
Yeah, like I'm expecting, like, you know, both these teams in the same game can't necessarily win, obviously, because only one team can win, but do extremely well because they kind of hold up that same position. So I'm looking to see how those battles go today. If we move over to the next page, we'll see the teams that go from 11th, currently down till 20th. A lot of teams here, you know, I think they've disappointed themselves right now. I think, you know, we're looking at Tasting Champions recently a lot. In my particular, I put them in 2nd to do really well. And, you know, they're obviously underperforming a little bit to see how the game plans change today. And in 12th, I'm looking there, Queasy and Nas, Thomas HD. A lot of people would have thought that these guys would have won overall the entire tournament. But so far, you know, they've been contested by Nate's team in Kenny Corner, which I'm not really surprised by. That drop spot is really powerful. And thinking you're going to get uncontested in this kind of region is rough because it's very rarely like that. So for them, you know, it's tough to see them being in 12th when, you know, they could have potentially won, but it's the lay of the land. It's the drop spot they picked.
Well, let's talk about, you know, sort of why that's happening. I think you look at the Catty Corner fights that we typically see. These are fights that are so quick, right? It's, you know, very much dependent on your drop. If you don't have a good drop, you lose that fight. You know, we've analyzed this hundreds and hundreds of times. But the fights that we saw, at least, you know, whenever we see on the broadcast, typically, you know, more long drawn out fights, not as reliant on drop, right? The team's both taking things a bit slow, and sometimes that plays in your favor, sometimes it doesn't. And unfortunately for Queasy, it just hasn't really played into their favor, even though they are in theory one of the better teams in this lobby.
Yeah, absolutely. There's one more tier that we'll come back to that I'd like to touch on. That's very similar. Really quickly, let's do a drawing board, okay? Reese, you pointed out the storm circles in games 1 through 6 yesterday. Talk to me about some of the trios that can kind of utilizing this to perform well.
Yes, this is the 3rd zone from all 6 games yesterday. It looks like a nice Christmas tree, doesn't it? Yeah. One of the things I want to note is that a lot of people always meme the south zones, but, you know, so far we've seen none of them. Maybe today is just going to be full of them. I think maybe we saved them all for any East. Like, any East was full of these kind of catty corner zones. But what I kind of point out is like how that benefits some of the teams, obviously. You know, sometimes you're going to get some good zone RNG. Obviously, Cammy, being Cammy's still, he's first right now. And we both know that the zones in these 3rd zone positions aren't the reason for their success. But overall, like, you can obviously tell that based on where their drop is, they're definitely going to have a bit of an advantage from there on out. Same with Aqua's team, who's currently in 3rd. Like, the Bony Burbs team, like, they have a lot of opportunity to rotate early to these positions. A lot of teams will be rotating past them, which obviously allows them more opportunities for surge in the early game, and they don't necessarily have to go as far, and they can spend a little bit more time looting.
No, I think some of the zones have been really favorable to these teams. I think a big thing to sort of almost think about is, you know, with these zones maybe not being as, you know, grueling as some others we've seen in different competitions, you'd expect actually certain teams to maybe be doing a bit better, right? Maybe you'd expect teams from the northern areas to maybe, you know, be a bit higher up in the standings, which really hasn't gone their way for the most part. But yeah, we talk about zones a lot. I think zones are very important. you know, I think maybe people rely too much on zones in terms of, you know, talking about, oh, well, we did bad because we didn't get many zones. And yeah, maybe that can affect you and stop you from doing as well as you maybe would have thought you could. But ultimately, these are things you prepare for. You play hundreds of hours of scrims and practice to be able to understand different zones and the way they all play out. So I'm looking forward. Hopefully we don't get all, you know, 6 South zones and people can meme about that. But as the person that writes the script, I can't guarantee that won't happen. So we'll see what happens when it comes to the zones.
I want to say, like, you know, another one of the last team I want to actually mention on there is like Kirianchi's team, right? When you look at these zones, like, because they're relatively central, you've got to think they're probably one of the teams who have the worst zones, right? You know, roughly the worst. Maybe Catty Corner, maybe even down in the further south, the Misty would say was worse, but like they're 5th so far, you know? They've managed to win game 4 and 5, which, as you can see, are the two kind of westmost, which, yeah, is the zones that have probably benefited them, but I don't necessarily think that's why they've won at all. They've managed to play really well through all of the remainder of the other games too, so it's like, you know, just because they're not getting that favorable zones for them, it's like you're still very easily able to perform up to a top level and currently be 5th.
Yeah, absolutely. Now let's talk about one of these trios. So we kind of touched on trios that aren't performing well, and you guys actually talked about them on the leaderboards. It's Tayson, it's Reason, it's Chapix, right? Everyone knows at this point, Tayson, Reason, names synonymous with greatness, but they haven't quite performed up to the level we would anticipated yet. But this is a brand new day. It's a fresh start, Levin. So how do we think they could kind of change things up going into today?
Well, I think the big thing is when you look at this trio, right, is at any given day, either one of these guys could be called the best player in the world, and you'd believe it. And not a lot of trios, even not a lot of the top trios, have that same privilege. But you can see in moments like this, they aren't clicking. Things are sort of falling apart. Things weren't working yesterday. The identity of this trio seemed to be lost. And I think they very much understand that. They very much have worked on that. I've spoken to Reason. He said he VOD reviewed for 5 hours. I don't know where he found the time to VOD review for 5 hours after yesterday. But he said that they said that they're going to switch things up in terms of their play style and what they actually do when it comes to strategically rotations, all of these things. And so I'm looking forward to seeing a new version of them in day 2, because this is a team that many people expected to do much better. You know, I know, Reece, you had them predicted at 2nd place, right? So they should be doing a lot better.
Yeah, you know, I'm looking for it in day 2. I'm looking for the comeback. There's 6 games total. It'll be rough for them to see if they can try and pick up like a 1st overall, because obviously they are exactly middle way basically throughout the leaderboard so far. So it will be tough to see them have such a huge comeback. But like you mentioned, like they are an all-star team. Like they're a team that has full potential players, like you mentioned, be the best in the world. And we often see these teams not necessarily working out so well when it comes to these lobbies because they don't fill the roles that they necessarily need to.
Yeah, and I think the big thing will be, you know, sort of that bounce back in the mentality, right? You know, the biggest fear in any given tournament, especially across multiple days, is can you reset mentally? Yeah, yesterday was rubbish, but can we come back tomorrow and actually fight hard and you know, build off of the foundation? You've spent the whole season working hard to get to this point. There's no point giving up now, right? You got to go out there and perform to the best you possibly can, and I hope they will do that. Those rumblings and rumors that maybe they'll be contested at Craggy Cliffs today, don't want to believe anything yet. We'll see. I'm guessing a couple minutes because the time will soon be upon us. But I really am optimistic about these guys doing better. We've seen it before. Last season, Anderlecht had a stinky day 1, did much better day 2, right? So it's never out of the realms of possibility. I'm going to be rooting for these guys.
Yeah, sometimes we do see trios like that, like because there's a 2-day format, they tend to do better on one of the 2 days, right? Sometimes it's better day 1, and then they kind of play catch up day 2, and vice versa, right? So I think you're right, and I really want to see them perform well, right? They've already made it to finals. They've already proven, hey, we're some of the very best. That's why we're here at all. But now it's like, can they perform at the level that we anticipated, right? Now, really quickly, we have a minute and a half before we go. Let's talk predictions before we jump on the bus. So these are the trios we think will take all of it home. Levin, Durag, Lev, you started us off. Queasy, Anas, and Tom Stage D.
Yeah, and obviously we discussed why this prediction hasn't maybe played out. You know, I really am interested to see how these catty fights look in the next 6 games. But, you know, I still got to give them their credit. Over the course of the season, they've been phenomenal, and hopefully today can be a good bounce back for them.
Yeah, I wonder if we're going to see Nate's team drop down to the south side, because realistically it's not been working out for them either. But let's have a look at Anderlecht's 4-0 X-Squeeze. So far in the top 10, we've already mentioned yesterday multiple times how they performed so much better on the 2nd day. So let's see if that comes through for them. Rashayo's pick, he's going to Accuracy or after Strokey, who are currently sitting in 3rd place, which is, I mean, realistically, Shah's been on point with the predictions the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, Shai is really, I don't know what he's doing. Maybe he's the one writing the scripts, right? He clearly knows more than I do. Sundown's got with Pink, Nebs, and and Stompy, who are sitting in 11th. They obviously did incredibly well last season. A team that works very hard, they prepare well. Hopefully today can be a bit of a better day where they can push themselves into that top 10.
It's a new day 11. It's a brand new set of 6 games. Whatever happened yesterday, let that wash off. Today, it is time to leave your mark on history as a trio. And let's see which of these trios can really pull out stops. And again, it's just all about that confidence, keeping going. If something goes wrong, just ignore that. Keep yourselves focused on target, and we'll see how things end up. But you heard the battle bus. It means we're kicking off day number 2 of the finals. After 6 games, we'll know who the new trios champions is. Oh my gosh, I can't wait. I'm so excited. Let's go hang out with Sound and Shia Wager to kick off the day.
Thank you so much, Zeke. 11 and Reese, 6 matches down yesterday. We've already given out Acts of Champions in 3 regions, and EU is going to kickstart the action yet again here on day 2. My name's Sundown, joined by Shia Wager to call all the action.
Absolutely, Sundown. Day 1 gave us a story we haven't really seen in EU so far. A leader with such a huge lead that everyone is now playing catch up. Can they hold on to the race? That's Steady, Kemi, and Teak towards the top, or will they falter on day 2 when everyone else has a fresh mental reset?
And realistically, too, we're going to be looking. We talked a little bit yesterday. If you joined us again for the first time, welcome. Also, if you're in Party Royale, what's up, Party Royale? How you doing? It's nice to be back wherever you're watching. Twitch, YouTube, Twitter, TikTok. Thank you for tuning in to catch all this amazing action. Yesterday, we kind of talked about that being the first installment of the story. Well, it's really kind of building up towards that final climax because they built up such a huge lead that they could get that crowning moment where they save the city, they get the Acts of Champions, they walk away with all the riches, rather than happening in kind of a game 11, maybe game 12 moment where we've seen a lot of past FNCSs. It'll flip over, and then right off the bat, yet again, Shio. I mean, yeah, we want to tune in with these guys, but the action doesn't stop on over at Believer Beach as Jonathan Arian Lee just butting heads for what feels like the 8th time, 7th time, it's the one time they finally disengaged yesterday.
Oddio, vecchio, Vadiel si è trombato. Vadiel si è trombato Mitro, vecchio.
Mitro is going to go down. There's going to be a trade back and forth already. Dennis is gone. Arian Lee is the activator in these fights all the time. He just starts them up, gets that first pick. And the thing is, if they do wait too long, there's many teams waiting to see if this fight breaks out to come through and invade as third parties.
Arian Lee's been playing disgustingly well. I'd love to get a little bit of a dig into how, in terms of these first eliminations, like how much of them has been him solo. Because every single time, it seems like we tune back in over. He's always one elim right into a second elim, and now he's gone over, gotten Mitra's Reaver card. They're going to loop back over and get control. And it seems like in this battle, day 1 here, they're going to kick it off and win the beach. It'd be honestly a little bit of a disappointment if they didn't right now.
Absolutely, the variation in the way he actually wins these fights as well. Sometimes it's the 50-50 right with the chest. He's faster, lands the shots. Other times it's all organized. He's still the first one to get that knockdown and get the full elimination. And he always confirms on it too, which is crazy. Here he is again engaging on O'Reilly. Landing that first shot, 2v1, making sure the pinch always stays secure. You have 2 sides at least of this, you know, if the person's in a box or in a building, secured at all times, so you know exactly where Nora is to run.
Right now, this is going to be our main focus in EU because, again, there's only a few spots where there are contested drops, 33 trios in the lobby, so 99 players, and we've seen mainly over the course of yesterday. Again, this is our second set of 6 games. 6 were played previously. Again, a little bit of a short FNCS, but some shots coming down a little bit from, that was the west, and there is a team to the north postured, but the contestants generally have happened right around this Believer Beach area, and then fights over in Caddy. The Caddy fight, though, seems to have gone more towards the disengaged type style, Shio.
For now, yeah, and we saw a little bit of that at the very end of the day, in day number 1. The big thing, too, as well, for the team that's coming into Believer Beach, I believe that should be the Oxy, Crow, and Jose, who usually end up rotating in late to the basketball court. And they also have, I think they're leading the pack in terms of trying to catch up and take things over. Meanwhile, though, the last fight we really like to watch a lot, has been going back and forth, is that Steamy Stacks. Malabuka versus Benji Fishy. They always end up trading lives, either one, but this time both are up. It's an elongated fight. It's not stopping now just yet, but Benji's wall-to-wall. He's 2 different people caught in a maze. He does not solve the puzzle. He goes down. Savage and Andretta now are in major trouble. Savage no shields, but has a medkit to pop to stay alive. they have to redeem this, and it's not possible. Savage with the desperation goes inside the box. It's unfortunate. They're going to have this situation every time one of these teams has one player left over, and they end up just, you know, at a scenic route, enjoying the nature of the island instead of actually playing the game for points.
Yeah, and trying to get disengage going through there, but unfortunately being dropped out via that instance to the stack, so unable to actually make it all the way to the water, which typically in this circumstance, what you want to do is get in the water and just start swimming. Hope you can find a boat, create a little bit of distance. He's going to be able to potentially do that here, but I mean, it's just not a situation you want to be in, whether you're a fish in a barrel, a rat in a trap. Benji doing his best impression of both there, and then Savage just desperately trying to claw him out. And Dretza now just going to try and extend the life, because we talked about a little bit. Oh, what's up there? Nice little jump out right around the side. We talked about it a little bit yesterday with the changes coming to reboot vans this season. We're now 5 minutes on those cars. You don't have to actually press to pick them up, just walk over the top of them. And a couple of reboot vans added around the map, there's always kind of a chance you can loop back around. However, seems like, yeah, and right as I say that, Jets is going to turn around and say like, oh, that seems like it's been about enough time, I can go back over. The benefit, though, having 2 boats there means you can kind of burn out the gas tank of one and still have the option to flee. We're going to switch back on over to your prediction, Chayo.
Yes, they are Aqua, Fast Roki. When it comes to this trio, they're playing a very different game compared to everyone else. A very central spot, uncontested. They have a lot of choice on what they want to do every game, but doesn't mean they don't have patterns. So obviously, and usually ending up at this bridge to get all their metal farmed up. It does take a while, which somewhat hinders them in gameplay. And if you see a zone like this, the Western one, really good for him, but the game's really coming to the fast. Look at the map on the left. There's so many trios already here. Usually they're solo for a bit. They get to talk, get their game plan set up, but now they're really just thrown into the fire.
Yeah, and if now we don't have any fights, we see second place in the bottom right, third place in the top right, might be a decent opportunity to check in with our first place trio, see what they got going on, see whether Storm Surges end up going to be a threat to them. Again, we'll have about 2.5 minutes before that first warning pops, and then we'll explain and get in the nuances of that. You'll hear us talking about it. For now, the only thing you need to worry about is teams are going to be looking to trade AR damage and not be too worried as long as their shields won't get broken. As long as the shield crack doesn't end up coming through, you're more than often going to be safe from any form of aggression. Currently, we're tuning on board this KPI, Jose, his trio mates, Crow and Deoxy. The only trio inside of the only first-time trio who's placed inside of the top 20 right now. And Child, they're in second.
The way they did it, too, is just so cool because they ended up contesting the first place team for at least the first few games, so they swapped to the other side of the map to pick everything up, right? So the fact that that even happened remotely and they're still this so far, like, you know, in the lead kind of all the way at the top with one game completely down, I mean, that's huge.
It was like one in like a little bit, right?
Yeah.
But they realized, hey, this probably isn't the best of decision. Then they figured out a different spot, which can really commend them for, especially picking on a fight at Believer Beach, where we've seen in other regions when you have 2 top trios who are just going to butt heads. It's very accessible to go in. There's a lot of sight lines. Then with the cross site to the north, you now have that accessible way of just popping one of those shadow cubes and then just raining down on top of them. You can see right now the Spanish trio just trying to occupy a little bit more of that western side. Micho, Arian Lee, Milan back up nearly to full strength. Arian Lee, yep, as I say that, is going to be popping one of the big pots there so you can pick up the extra one outside the box. Pro in the feed, that'll be a confirmation. We'll have our 8th player going down, but we've still only seen 2 trios fall so far.
A core elimination is kind of weird as well because usually both those trios end up surviving for so long. So surge routes might have changed. Spanish one starting to get active. This is also somewhat irregular, at least inside Believer Beach. They always fight somewhere far away after hunting for a little bit. No strangers to this fight, though. I think Spanish trio has taken out Mitros at least twice yesterday. This was on the shores itself. Think about this team, too, that's so cool. They're a win-more team and very flip-floppy, which is appropriate for the environment they're in right now at Believer Beach. But basically, the games that they don't do too well, they don't get too many points, not even inside the top 10. But those games where they're really set up to win, double-digit elims, is huge inside the top 5 or just a win overall. That's why they're really so far ahead of everyone else.
See, you said flip-flop, me and my brain immediately went to floppers. It took me a good little 3 counts to be like, oh, he meant like the shoes, flip-flops, the colloquialism for sandals. Yeah, that was fantastic. There you go. That's, you know what? Generally, I'm not a super big fan, but that was 10 out of 10. I rated 8 out of 8, mate. Great bait.
Well, the reason it might have taken a while, right, is because in your prehistoric time age, the flip-flops aren't invented, right? As dinosaurs, you don't.
Oh, that's true. We were walking around barefoot. We got
Exactly.
real callous feet, just like Cammy said, and Teak on their rotation. I mean, they're always hitting the ground, running, whether they got to walk, but they're really good about finding the IO cars, trying to add those chonkers tires to cut down the rotation time. But we're going to swing back over a fight wall to wall here, and this could have big leaderboard implications as the Oxy loses everything but a sliver of HP. Jose being down to no shield. Crow also no shield, so the aggression coming out, but Ironly is down but not out. And as I say that, he gets knocked out as well. The Oxy going to get the confirmation over, so it's going to be on Milan and Mitra to try and get aggressive, but with the Siphon and some chug splashes, they're back up to effective HP very quickly.
They have a lot of time too. Zone is very close by, so definitely we'll see this fight go the whole mile. Thing is, though, how do they respond to this? Kind of all the way on the backside. It's looking rough. Actually, a disengage from the side of Ironly, so not really interested in anything but the damage. Just smart, because that's really all you need for Surge. Maybe Milan's just running around. They don't have the shields to upkeep with the war of attrition the way the Spaniards have. I mean, they're fully shielded, like Sundown mentioned. Mitro is still way under half, and they're beaming at the car as well. Could be a trap setup too.
They're either looking for a quick ambush opportunity, but the way Fortnite players, you set multiple options here. So Milan dipped. Milan is gone. He's safe, knowing that other teams are going to be rotating him based off of where the zone is. Mitro's hanging out. The reason Mitro's hanging out, Aaron Lee's car is still there. The reboot van is still there. All the other teams are going to see the Spanish trio rotating back in. The KPR trio, like, they need to move. As right as we say that, Vettel and Surprise come over the side. Mitro now has the opportunity to just pick up Aaron Lee and then go meet back up with Milan. So while that trade didn't look so great in the end, like, yeah, you're going to give over a little bit of resources, they'll be able to refarm there. They should get Aaron Lee back up on their feet, and as long as Vettel and Surprise, so do a nice little surprise attack over on the side, like, the next thing they really have to worry about is meeting up with Milan and getting a safe zone in, but he's on the safer side of the zone, so he should be able to communicate where the path is. Overall, great situation, and you can see the reboot is going to end up coming out, but some fights happening around the map as Hellfire will get a knock onto Stormy right in the feet.
Like sending a bodyguard out and then having them relay information to you, basically catch up and make sure you have a secure route. Absolutely. Big thing too with Surge now active, the threshold on the right, basically you're gonna have to deal enough damage to stay ahead of the threshold, or you're gonna start taking damage in the form of lightning. I think it's 25 a pop, so got to be careful, got to stay active, is to make sure teams are engaging with each other across the field. Everyone's going to be looking for that damage, and I saw 400 below when it first popped, wondering what team it was. Kiriachi, Stormy right 2's completely uncontested spot, not near anyone, and usually that would sound really good, but if you need to get damage and engage with other teams, I mean, if you don't find any, you're going to be in trouble.
Especially with still 92 players up in the lobby, so Storm Surge will punish the trios who have been the most passive, the ones who have done the least amount of damage. The damage to get above that threshold then appears on the right-hand side. If you are below that threshold when it ticks over, that's going to start in zone 3 in 25 seconds. You can see the counter in the bottom right-hand corner. 25 damage every 5 seconds, so action is going to happen. We are going to tune into the teams who are below, because regardless, they're going to try and do something, whether it's throwing AR shots out, or more than likely when they're this far below, trying to get wall-to-wall and trade. You can see now that number has dropped. Somebody on the trio is trading shots out and getting get there. You can see players are getting hit in the lobby, but Toos, they need to gauge. Don't forget Shio. They won 2 matches yesterday. These are defending FNCS champs. They got to go, and it's Full Net Wings and Karmi they're fighting against.
Yeah, it's the second fight they're rolling in with. Also in defeat, I saw Iron Lee go down, and big fights happening on the north side of zone as well. So the story there continues. Thomas HD finally finds something to activate with. Toos, actually, Stormy right still in trouble. Sure, that won 2 games yesterday, that won that FNCS as well, is just having issues getting day number 2 started. Stormy right can't even stay on his feet right now. Toos gets knocked down too. All down to Kiriachi, but against 3 players who now have siphons while lightning strikes, there's no chance. 1 pumps to the face, he's gone too.
Cammy also got a confirmation going on there. Not sure if they ended up picking up a knock, but this is something we saw them do incredibly well yesterday, where they'll position the situation knowing they're above Surge from the early tags they get based off their landing spot. And they go and they posture up against a trio who is forced to fight against Surge. And they are fantastic when it comes to the defensive fights against Surge. So 3 eliminations, plus if you keep an eye on the top left corner, Surge is turned off, and we're inside 24 trios going down. So that's an additional 5 points going through. That's already 11 points on the day. Our first place trio, they're looking great.
We focus on the top left for a bit. Numbers will keep dwindling down. You focus on the bottom middle. You can see the loadouts that he's rolling in with, the history of the cars a little bit low. Also focus on the bottom right, the mini map right now. This zone is kind of a complete mimic of game number 1 of yesterday. This is the same game that Steady Kemi and Teak are playing. And if today ends up exactly like yesterday, this team might break a record for how many points you can just accrue inside the FNCS finals of any region. This is huge for Steady Kemi and Teak. They're experts on this natural low ground zone, especially even if they're rivers. They know exactly how to adapt, stay ahead of it, and stay ahead of every team, both in position and in points. If day 2's like day 1, I mean, they must be smiling so wide right now.
And the only thing that is really going to stop them, because based on how they play their game plan, they land on the eastern side of the map, they land in a split position and land at very high points and just try and get first shot accuracy weapons to accrue surge early on, and then kind of go along this interior scavenger route. It's something they've been doing for seasons and had so much practice in. Because of that strategy, the only real opportunity to punish them is kind of inside this threshold right now when they tunnel interior to the zone on the low ground. If the rest of the lobby recognize that, and they should know where they're coming from zone, they're always on pretty much the southeastern side of the zone, regardless of where it is, with very few exceptions. Just start shooting at them. Like, they don't do anything special. They literally put up a box that's maybe like 4 metal by 4 metal wide. Just start burning into their resources, but nobody ever looks that way. Everyone else is always so concerned about looking towards the outside, trying to catch these cheeky eliminations and stuff. But at some point, you're not just playing the lobby. You're trying to play the tournament, but instead, they're going to be able to walk away with the Axe Champions and 100 grand in their pocket if somebody doesn't do something different.
It is so similar what they do to every team. I think the trick for them is that they find whatever cluster there is, like of these many players, right? And they end up right beside everyone by themselves, never editing. The players just focus on the main dish in front of them, right? They kind of look like a pet to the main character. You're not going to ever focus on the pet of the main character. You want to fight the big boss, right? So, you know, no one's focusing on the ads. It's easy distraction for them to even capitalize on those clusters. It's huge for Steady Kemi Teak, and this is also something they love to do. I've seen it every single season. This long tarp, it's impossible to even find them in pressure. They have a whole map worth of room here.
Well, it's impossible to ignore the unicycling lobster who's yelling, "Look at me, look at me, look at me, look at me," when these guys just end up chilling and sitting in here, right? But on the flip side, you talked about it. You see them do this all the time. You're like, oh, it's hard to know where they are. No, it's not. They're at the end of this very long tunnel in the middle. They're in the same spot every time. They do it every single game. And finally, it looks like a little bit of pressure going down. I don't necessarily want to leave that area. If Andalex is pushing onto that wall and we just saw a shield break going through, if they do end up confirming that, we will want to take an eye out. We do see Aqua Stoke and Co currently sitting in 3rd place, 9 points going through the 2 eliminations, and a legendary pump on Aqua. They're set up in a situation to potentially make plays, but we're pulling relatively to the interior with only one real high ground bourbon play, and they're actually going to base up directly on top. I think it's a different stack towards the side, so they're going to be okay right now. You can see the right hand side, 176 below. No, I said they were going to be okay. That's a lie. They're just 12 above.
We're surfing on those threshold points. They're going to get a little bit of tags back and forth here. No, not at all. Is that a knock actually to Fasroki? I'm not sure exactly what happened there, but a little bit of a mini disaster. Chapix with the aim looks really good right now. Maybe that was reason too, but it doesn't even matter. Fasroki, he's gonna be back on his feet.
No, it's Trippin. Trippin ended up picking up, and I'm not surprised with that because Trippin does end up carrying that silent semi-auto sniper, which if you end up getting a beat on the headshots of 70s, those add up real quick, right? Like, you get through kind of the right line of sight. You can see the top left corner. We talked about Andalex pushing through. It's going to be EGRM who he ends up on the other side of, which means Kami said he'd likely stay from the aggression. You can see Vostroki, Aqua, and CRR still on the right-hand side, 28 below. 5 seconds, bottom right-hand corner, so that 25 damage every 5 seconds. It's going to come through. And on top of the fact, they just had to get a revive out, so they already burned some of their excess stuff. They're only 5 above. They're desperately trying to throw shots out. Queasy ends up getting knocked by Andalex in the feed in the top left-hand corner. Tons of eliminations coming out as Hottie Trippin and Illocrest are completely eliminated. Rifle and Co. trying to throw some shots at that. CRR gets knocked yet again, but I think he's just desperately trying to trade out the surge shots, knowing that it doesn't matter. I can go down but not out as long as I get us above the threshold.
I'm just wondering how they play out the rest of the game. I mean, They barely have any ammunition. That's CR, Fast Rookie, Aqua. They've gone through so many different shields as well because they're doing these over-peaking strats desperately to try to get something happening. Even Savage, who got back into the game, gets shaken out. Thomas HD, who was knocked before, is back for now, but can't find any damage either. This is the toughest I've seen Surge beat for so many teams.
Yes, it's because the lobby is so fast, but it should end up turning off here as Andretta, Savage, and Benji go down, and they go down outside of the cascading placement point. So now we've gotten kind of into that back half. We talk about how getting the top 24 is kind of, hey, congratulations, you made it through the early game well. Getting the cascading placement points as well, congratulations, you made it through the mid game. Here's the transition to the end game, and Thomas and Anas are trying to make do with more than just the one placement point they got. Each trio that falls will be an additional placement point, but the one thing we're going to start talking about is going to be every single game we get to this point. If Seti, Cammy, and Teak are still up, every single one of those placement points you get, you might feel awesome about getting a 5th place game. That doesn't matter if Cammy, Seti, and Teak are getting a 4th or a 3rd again, or they're winning a game again, right? Like if they're able to just keep converting and turning these into placement points, you have to close the gap on them at some point, as Mustache is going to end up picking up Thomas, leaving Anas to be by himself, solo dolo, 5th zone. We'll close, we'll have the moving zone. We're going to have another thick surge, Shio.
Absolutely. This is 49 players. Only one really went down to that half and half moving. Not sure how every team adapted, especially because so many of them are taking damage. This is going to be one of the times that Seti, Cammy, Teak don't actually have the front side of the zone. They still will find it somehow. And once again, I feel like I'm having deja vu. It's Aqua, Vasroki, CR on height. They're looking completely fine now. The surge issues were merely just an entertainment factor or play for them. They make things slightly interesting. On low ground as well, we'll have Seti, Cammy, and Teak matching the front side of the zone. It's literally exactly what we saw yesterday with a few solos here and there like Anas, trying to get as much placement as possible. I mean, it's going to be good for them if they do get it, but if Seti, Cammy, Teak stay alive, the whole lobby is just going to be frozen in time.
As long as they're up on their feet, they're gaining forward. And again, we talked about it a little bit at the start of this match. At some point, we're going to have to crown victors in the UFNCS. We like to call out that moment when, like, hey, nobody can catch them, and it might come sooner rather than later. They're taking the skies, but need to be aware Teak has absolutely no shield right now. They do a great job, though, of finding a layer, and they're just getting back together. They'll invest plenty of their shields to get him back up, make sure that he's taking the minis, then prioritize over on the chug splashes so they don't waste any of it. Deoxy goes down, so that's something to keep an eye on, and Anas going to play a little bit of spoiler as he gets a full confirmation onto Pink, and they're going to use a full pad to bonk their head at the top and then go down to the low ground, and it looks semi-intentional as Aqua also going to get a knock under scram in the top left. We still will need players to go down, but for Stroke and Aqua doing a good job of ramping out, but they're already onto wood and only really building out a double layer. Luckily, it looks like Zone is going to pull back over, and they're going to get a solid connection, so a little bit of respite, more control given to them, and the question is, will somebody be able to actually challenge what happens on the low ground?
Aqua's mats are bleeding out here. Sora Fast Roki's no utility options either in terms of anything cool, a shield or something like that. And Fast Roki's inventory is ammo so low as well, so they're going to need a siphon and they're going to need a refresh. They're going to have to actually touch down to earth and do something. Look at Hellfire. Look at the chop. It's coming through, barely even connected. High ground will get affected in just a second. They're below though for Cammy, Seti, Teak. The surge does start to answer and give this top team trouble. They have splashes though. They're going to try to out heal it. 8 players going to go down. This is going to be a timed situation for these guys. All they have to do is survive. They're going to break into a box fully. All the sprays find nothing, almost out of shield. One more tick and that crack. Yes, it's heard by the entire lobby now. Maximum defense. Big Cammy down. Be lethal. Cammy goes down. Seti's about to go down to a sub 20-point game. He's a solo for the moment, and Aqua, Fast Rookie, CRR, they've figured things out again. Another bounce back blesses them on high ground.
So Cammy hasn't been full converted over. You still have Surge hitting it on Seti, but this is the problem when you play a little bit too passive. Surge will finally turn off, and we saw yesterday in match number 2, Seti had an absurd individual run to get them more placement points, and to continue that, and to get them the top 7 placement. Can they do it again on the low ground? The issue is Shio. Yesterday, he had a bunch of shields to go with it. He had a bunch of utility. They had to burn all of those to try and get Teak back up to healthy before they fought against Storm Surge. So now he's dealing with no shields, a pad to try and get around to the outside, but around the outside he goes. Kitzel's right there. However, a stiff breeze will be able to knock him over. Don't forget, up on the high ground, we still have our 3rd place team looking to close the gap. He has 1 HP worth of storm tick. Any single weapon in the game, if it hits him, will knock him over. All he wants to do is just stay in his box and keep going through. 23 builds, all wood. As long as zone keeps pulling away, he can just hang out. He's looking for right hand. There's a trio right on the other side. Will this be the first time we see them fall outside the top 10? Doesn't matter. Still gets our second place trio going down. Hops into the box and he goes down. But a couple other trios fell before him. I think he snuck a top 8 in there anyway. So we talk about efficiency. That said, he brings a swing back on over Mustache Malabuka. She's trying to put a stamp on it right on the start of the day. They have 12 eliminations so far here right now. No, I lied, Shia. They have 14 eliminations and still counting. Kenzo picks up 4ZR in the feed. You see Andalex also going down. AquaCR still up on the high ground though. Raiding shots for Stroki is going to get to Verax, and we're about to have our top 3. But Mustache is doing so well finding these shots and weaving them in between the edits.
There's so many souls just typically going down, trying to clutch for this team. This entire trio still alive. The Mustache with the 8th elimination. Another big pump. That's 9. Can we get it 10 on the solo man himself? Almost with the beams back and forth. Like a seesaw, balance, but it's not going to be enough to win the game. That's a huge amount of eliminations, though. It's Aqua, Westbrook, CRR. Take that VR, but Sundown, so many healers, so many fragmented solo players clutching for their teams.
Fragmented solo players clutching for their teams, but it also looked like all of the top 3 got through. We saw our 3rd place team pick up the VR. We saw our leaders, I think Seti snuck in the 8th there, and we also saw Jose end up getting in 10th place, so there might be a little bit of a shake-up, but we're going to kick it on over to the desk. Zeke, Reese, Levin, what you got for us?
An extremely strong start. Levin, you asked for a 15 elimination victory out the start of the day. We almost got that from Mustache, Malabuka, and Shizo. They started the day in 13th place with 108 points, but now they will certainly be climbing the leaderboard. Congratulations, though, to Aqua, CR, Fastroki, a 7 elim victory royale. Aqua's coming back. He's coming back strong, Levin.
They had a really good day 1, and I think the big thing with them was always going to be, with Queasy being contested, there isn't that much of a threat for high ground, and so you'd expect Aqua to really dominate it throughout the day. And yeah, the high ground wasn't as dominant as it typically is yesterday, but definitely a great start for these guys. That victory out will very much be helpful in terms of the race to catch Kamisei and T. Really good stuff from Seti to be able to stay alive as long as he did as well, right? So props to him. Probably one of their worst games, but it still wasn't a bad game. Like in the context of like general Fortnite competitive, not a bad game, but probably one of their worst games considering how good they were yesterday. Standard first game though. I'm not like what I'm seeing so far for me.
Yeah, an Aqua win. They didn't manage to pick up a single victory round yesterday, so it's like, you know what? It's about time that Aquaman and I keep saying Aqua and Co. Aqua, that's even worse almost. Aqua, Fastroki, and CRR managed to pick up a victory round, and they do it in day 1, and that's obviously going to close the gap big time because the important thing, you know, you mentioned this, he managed to clutch a bunch of points in solo. They had 19 when basically the rest of the trio went down, so he himself got 9 additional points. So just remember that later on in the leaderboards. If he's just above and they win by 9 points, like that is why Seti right there. But on top of that, most importantly, the team in second, Dioxy's team, got 20 points, right? So they actually distanced the gap between Dioxy's team there too. So like, you know, the gap, even though it wasn't a great game, distanced themselves a little bit from that first and second place team.
Yeah, that's all. Literally, after yesterday's performances, they didn't have a game outside of top 7. So now we just make that top 8. Like that's still good. They've not dropped outside of the top 10 yet. We'll have to see if that continues to be the case. Guys, were there any differences from day 1 to day 2 as far as like early game, drop spots? Talk me through some of that.
So most importantly, right, it's all the same. Right now, everything's the same. I was going in and we're seeing change in drop spots, we're seeing change in strategies. No, we're seeing the same old stuff. And this is what it was yesterday, right? Nate's team alongside Queasy's team and Catty Corner fighting it out here. And towards that later end half of the day, we saw a third party coming in from the south-hand side there. This is actually a really sweet clutch because notice Queasy's actually now as a solo because the NASA's just gone down. And he managed to pick up, you think, what I thought was going to be a 1v2, right? He managed to pick up Skype, but Vanyak's team actually ends up rolling in from the south side, being a third party and just easily picking up Nate there. So this Catty Corner is becoming even more of a mess. Stevie Stacks, we kind of saw this engagement going on as well, where Malabuka managed to pick up Benji Fishy the first time, and then it's like, it's just kind of just happening at that point, right? Shai's just trying to fly away, and he kind of takes an eye onto where, I think it was Andrea was dipping, over there at that side. So they managed to pick up that secondly, then Andrea dipped out, didn't do too much either. And over in Believer Beach, we kind of caught the tail end of this same time. Ariane Lee started to absolutely frag out. He picked up 2 eliminations. That was onto Janice and Fadil, leaving Noah left as a solo. And you can see him, he's moved his way to risk it. Just crouching in a corner, similar to game 2 yesterday, but unfortunately was not able to really get much.
Mamma mia, ragazzi, il fight tra il Vadelone e il mitragliere, ragazzi, tanta roba.
And the thought of CR at Coach
winning
in FNCS,
guardate quanti punti, ragazzi, guardate 50 eliminazioni. La scorsa partita aveva 2 e 45, credo.
City Caliente, but if they can keep having games like the one they just had, they're going to be on the right path. So all in all, really great stuff. Flowis, Hellfire, and Scram as well, a team that's really impressed me this season. They've been, it's almost been like they've been quiet, right? I don't want to say they've been quiet because they've been great, but all in all, really decent team. Particularly at the next page though, because we have some more teams that have impressed as well. I'm looking forward to seeing what.
Com'è?
Che tortura. È la cosa che vai via, non c'è wifi. Schifo di te.
We're still seeing a team seemingly do well out of that, right? With
Ma il problema è che piove, ma c'è un caldo da morire. No, ma ci sono ancora 20 gradi, no, 19 gradi.
Oddio, sta per startare la seconda.
You gotta do it right. We only have 5 more games, so something needs to change if we're looking to contest even that top 5, right? Okay, Fortnite fam, you heard the battle bus, which means we're going back in all the action. Shio wager sundown. Back over you.
Thank you so much, Zeke.
Oddio, questo ragazzi è vestito.
One match down.
Ragazzi, questo qua è vestito, ma in che senso? Ma in che senso è vestito questo?
È una skin di Fortnite.
L'altro è così, è stile hawaiano. Lo Shio wager, ragazzi, è così, stile hawaiano.
One elim performance, and Steady did end up clutching in the 8th place, so his 8th place was still 5 elims, so it's not like that was insignificant, they're still piling up the lead, and alright, flip a coin, who wins it this time?
As I say that, he's doing all the juice with these tires. Thomas and also Greasy have the guns, so wondering how even Nate got away in the situation and isn't knocked. I mean, that's crazy. No weapons, running all this big movement. Things are coming through from an outside, so I'm just flabbergasted in the fact that Thomas HD just got caught right there. Skype with a huge shot. Nate now down, but the trade is okay for their team. They're gonna have a lot of control here, and Anas is now left as a solo. I'm not sure how this happened. It just felt like
la scorsa partita, ragazzi, l'avevano vinto il team che è stato killato, però poi ne è rimasto in vita 1 e ha ributtato tutti e tre. Ha fatto una play, ragazzi, assurda. E poi, ragazzi, qua c'è la oddio, il Benji che si killa il Malibu, ragazzi. Oddio, il Benji che si killa il Malibu. È l'ultimo che è rimasto,
like we talked about, create a little bit of distance towards that north side, but it's a very predictable rotation out when Mustache Malibuco and no effective HP. So tough position will at least find a blue lever and some minis, so he might actually just try and deny these minis a little bit. I don't necessarily hate that play. He's unable to pop them and at least pop the 2, then maybe chuck the other one away.
Ragazzi, senza vita completamente.
You can see doesn't necessarily want to commit to going in this guy, because as soon as he does that, he is going to get called out, and Janta should see him. He should have just saw him right there, and yeah, she's going to try and trade it out, potentially take a 1v1 while he has the opportunity to, but it's going to be a difficult push. He finds a great shot, the rare lever action. You can see that rate of fire in the wall-to-wall prowess there. You can see him trying to chase this down once to get an opportunity to get one more shot on to Injecta before his teammates are able to help, and that's not going to happen as S10.
Il Malibu ormai, ragazzi, è da ieri che vuole contestare il Benji, ragazzi, ma non hanno capito che non vincono un fight. Qua c'è il Vadel, ragazzi, il Vadel in azione.
Getting aggro real quick here.
Il Vadel, ragazzi, quando mi piace sto giro qua.
Not regular at all for the Spanish trio whatsoever. When they come rolling in, it's always at Believer Beach on their own time. This time, going to be absolutely invaded at their spot near the castle.
Oddio, il Vadel è morto, ragazzi.
He decides to just go, and now it's Crow. What's he going to do next? Absolutely nothing with this inventory. This is for long-range shots, not a close-range fight, and he gets taken out.
E niente, ragazzi, no Anelli contro 3.
No, moving away from Believer Beach on that fight. They're actually doing what classic teams used to do from Believer Beach.
No Anelli, ragazzi, contro 3. No Anelli.
At Castle, but so fast. I think that's a direct
Oddio, questo è legionato col camion.
They just win it up.
So did Mitra and Ironly finally force them to lead? It feels weird for that to happen after 7 games, but I guess better late than never if you're looking to just make a play in the money right now. You can see Advise trying to do his best to throw a little bit of a monkey wrench in the play, and he's doing a good job of that, picking up one full confirmation, trying to get on the wall with that rare pistol. We talked about how good it can be in close quarter situation, not necessarily the epic or legendary variant, but still has a ton of power, still has that 2 times headshot multiplier, and right now Advise doing a really good job. This looks like it's just a stream cleanup 1v1 according to the bottom part of the map. Does end up taking a 72 shot there, so it's going to pop the mini. He has plenty of excess there. Staciptos picks up Nate in the feed. That will end up being a knock. We've only had 2 full trios go down as Nate does get confirmed. A lot faster paced game than we saw in the previous one, Shao. I guess teams don't want to be following the storm so late as Advise able to just pick that one up there. Good finish up on the fight. Needs to head right on over to the reboot.
And it might sound like a broken record here, but this exact same situation happened yesterday. The first game where Surge was crazy and it was so tough for teams to find damage. A second game where people get frustrated, insta switch drops or go for faster fights. It gets kind of insane. Nice reboot though. Get this team back up on board. The big thing too for the teams that are alive at Steamy Stacks. Yeah, we saw Mursash's team lose, and that might be bad for them group advantage, but it's also very good for Camiseti and Teak. The one way they can get stopped today is if these teams were having an absolute display of power in the first early games, continue that and keep racking up more and more points, get BRs or double-digit elims over and over again. If you're at a 50-50 spawn and your team doesn't get to show off that power in the end game, in even one game, it allows people in the league to just keep that lead for so much longer.
Well, so at this point, too, the Spanish trio just absolutely floundering here. Yes, they were the newcomers of the scene. That performance was fantastic yesterday. But they needed to repeat that performance and better in order to pass Camiseti and Teak. They have had 2 bad matches today. That is not going to happen. However, we did see from Stroke CR and Aqua able to pick up the match #1 victory round. They did close that gap a little bit. Not a ton, but they closed the gap. They made up a little bit of delta in that point. If they can keep doing that, there's a chance. The best chance is going to happen right now. Like I said, they're plus 16 points based off the command. You can see it right now. 28 for TTCO, 44 in Aqua. That is just the day #1 numbers. I mean, if anybody's going to catch him, Shayo, I think it's this trio.
Yeah, and the way they're going to be doing it, if they want to, cement it in game 1 with just 7 elims, they have to just keep going for wins here. That's literally what it has to be. I would say 3 victory royales. They have to win half the games minimum to make that space up first, and then maybe win more after that as well. I mean, it's a tough task. Based on game 1 though, and the way these zones are going, they keep getting these home zones at Boney Burbs, get to take their time, do what they want, come back to the POI. It's really good for Aqua and IGL that likes to have that setup, choose specifically where he wants these bases at the highest points in the map. They're delaying the game right now too, so now usually you already see them at a base, ready to shoot. They're still looting up.
Oddio.
Yeah, looting up,
ragazzi.
they do have that legendary shotgun on top.
Ragazzi, gli hanno fatto la quadra,
towards the convergence, which once you have mass materials is very efficient. You can see that counter just a little bit under the elimination total. Anytime we do flip over to a player, it gives us a little bit more detail. We know he only needs to farm on wood, but the convergence has very little materials by it. Makes it a good spot to rotate past and potentially look for tags, but not a good spot to go unless you max up your
meglio leftare il fight. Sì ragazzi, perché hanno in un panino, anzi in un doppio panino, perché c'erano quelli là da sopra che li stavano piccando, quelli là di dietro e questi qua davanti che stavano rotando, ragazzi. Quando mi sa che li hanno riconosciuti e hanno detto se vogliamo vivere, restiamo. Se vogliamo fare qualche punto extra, vogliamo portarci qualche soldino a casa, mettiamo il fight. Se fight contro l'acquatico o sei morto o vinci un fight tirando un 200 a
if they continue their game and then maybe Steady Kemi Teak flop a little bit, they literally just get top 3s over and over and over again. Might be a definite possibility.
That's the end of the 6 games yesterday on EU. 2 were won via the high ground crown, and 2 being the ones to be able to do that. I think largely we've seen high ground just being a safe control and a way to kind of get a passage into at least kind of those top 3 situations. However, you need to be able to execute after the fact because EU is filled with teams who are more than happy to just hang out on the mid and low ground and play for that last fight. They'll play for second place knowing that, like, hey, if we take a 3v3 at the end and we get all 3 of those eliminations, that plus maybe a couple early on, like 5 elims VR, 40 points, that sounds pretty good, right, Shai?
Consistent, that's all it is, and that's the toughest thing for all these teams, because We saw yesterday even a little bit. Every single team basically gave up at least one game, other than really Steady Kemi and Teak. They were just rolling in the whole way too. So, I mean, they have to basically play perfectly, and that's just to be beside the team that's in first place. Just haven't really seen this before anywhere but really anywhere, sometimes Brazil as well. So,
perché
it's
oggi
be
ce l'hanno
tough.
quelli là di fronte, anzi neanche in testa.
Yeah, team down in Brazil ended up opening up a huge lead. PHZen and his trio, I mean, they played phenomenally yesterday. And if you haven't checked out some of the other regions Fortnite, I highly recommend it. There was a Japanese broadcast for the Asian finals last night. You can tune into. I know a couple people were streaming the OC. If you want to check out your favorite players, I recommend checking out one of the watch parties wherever you're tuning in to catch the action. That's all we care about. Just watch some Fortnite. Give these players the credit. This is the premier event. We got the Grand Royale coming up as well, so don't forget to keep your eye on the announcements, all of the Twitter. See what's going to go on with that, because we're going to be rolling right into another competition. But right now, it's all about EU. 5 games left. We're going to have that Storm Surge warning popping up here on the right side a little bit. Again, that's for the trios who have done the least amount of damage, and they're going to be pressured 25 damage every 5 seconds. But no, O'Reilly doing some pressure himself right now, picking up the full healing. That's Roban, who him and Nyan, they've had a really tough time. Their trio who really had high hopes for, but it just seems like there's either a little bit of not only communication barrier going on there, not necessarily calming in their native languages, but just not having necessarily time and chemistry that a normal season would have been able to develop for a full trio, as we see Micho and Arian Lee also going down there to Coral and Splash.
One thing I feel like Roban did really well is filling in the gaps of some of the big teams when they weren't actually there in the qualifiers. They looked really good when they were in control and didn't have some of the big names to face, but as soon as those names start taking up the low ground, as soon as Steady Kemi Teak start to be ahead of you faster, and Aqu was a little bit more dominant on height, it's tough for some of the teams, as you're saying, might have those comms issues, those identity issues, to find a spot on the map. Floki, Siptos, and Clement. I'm not going to add that tag to them completely, but it seems like they're kind of going completely under the radar. They don't have a sense of control completely in the game when they're playing. They are adapting really well to every situation, but I feel like you need a little bit more than that if you want to win. To stay top 5, they can definitely play how they're playing, but to elevate the game, I think they need to be a little bit harder towards these end games.
Yeah, but we've seen it in particular when it comes to French Fortnite trios, and when they do end up putting it all together, it's terrifying. Like, it's almost a different breed that sometimes they play. They do have a little bit of a practice situation for the core group who ends up playing together, and when they are able to just put together a full 6 or 12 game performance, it really adds up to something that's impressive. But right now, it's Steady Kemi and Teak who are the ones who are setting the pace, so it doesn't matter how fast you're playing, you have to play to their level. As you see Storm Surge, the warning is going to tick on the right-hand side. 646 above, so no pressure on them as Nakos is going to get the knock on Stompy. We already saw Nebs go down, so it should just be Pink over there. You can see Aware, Karma trying to spray some shots around, getting the priority convergence, knowing Reform is going to be tough. Andalex, X-Squeeze, and 4CR also trying to add a little bit to their total. The question is, who is below? They're just ticking above. We will end up now having 3 trios who could be impacted. Storm Surge will start in about 75 seconds.
Storm Surge, I feel like it's been the trip up for 4CR, X-Squeeze, and Andalex. This is a few games.
Intanto ragazzi non so se questa cos'è una casetta, quella
you can see too in this game. It's not going to be, you know, the comfortable 200 damage above. The nice message you want to see on the right
che
side.
Poi ragazzi a me all'inizio, quando non conoscevo il
with the rest of the teams around them,
mi sembrava tipo un
and it might just be the zones that are tripping these guys up. We've been in the north side so long right now, it feels like we're not even watching EU, we're in Canada, but it is what it is. These guys will dive into these boxes, try to pick up that damage, get close and personal. This is a way to rack things up. It is riskier though, because you put your body on the line. It's not like a long-range base. Sometimes you don't have the luxury to do that. If you're rotating late, having to go north, having to go towards the center every single time.
Yeah, it makes it a little tough. You can see Benji picking up the knock there onto Hottie. Yellowcraft getting the confirmation onto Zendaya, but Skite going down to himself there, so not necessarily going to end up being happy. That could have been chopped out. You can see
ragazzi, ma tutti quanti hanno stati delle sfide, ma c'è
right now 4CR, X-Squeeze, and Andalex just starting to survive. They are wall to wall with this trio. They don't necessarily have to be taking this fight, but they do want to end up well above the wall. And actually, as I say that, X-Squeeze actually ends up getting a knock onto Polly. They're going to try and see if they can't pull that down, but not out player back and end up taking all the resources, and they're going to be able to do it.
Nice bootleg harpoon. Sometimes you just got to use your hands.
Qua parte lo storm, ragazzi. qua ragazzi parte lo storm.
Get that refresh to 395, so the situation just completely changes. Sky, although, is going down. Nebs does clap back on him, Bruno. TQ still having a thing to say. Carmi, who was actually at a high elevation, so I'm wondering exactly how that fight even broke out. But now 600 damage above Surge. And Alex Squeeze 4-0 are doing so well. I'm waiting to see exactly how this game really goes for them. Every time they end up inside these top 10 situations, they rack up around 7-6 eliminations and do change how the top 10 looks overall.
Hellfire and Flonada also picked up a pair of elimination confirmations there, so should be a nice little round of points. Storm Surge does turn off, but unlike last game, not as many fragmented trios and full trios going down, so lots of still duos and solos were up on their feet, meaning no placement points given out yet. We still have 28 trios in play trying to compete for that. So a little bit of a different lobby, a little bit of some solo duos running around. You can see Scram was one to get one of the elimination points. Hellfire picking up the other. That's +4 for them. We are dropping down below that 70 number. Not too many reboot bans in play as well. I think there might be one like slightly on that northwest corner that should play for the next zone. Otherwise, have the normal players in. Nope, no, actually, I don't think. Yeah, there is one all the way on just kind of like that little western border there. But otherwise, not going to be super acceptable as there are tons of players who are there. There is still one in Boney that can potentially get a player. So we see a yellow triangle there. We've flown it up in the top right-hand corner and Scram. Hellfire actually got knocked, but they're going to try and pull him away and get a revive, and they're pulling him way back into the tunnels.
What is this space? It's huge. There's so many weird things going on in the zone. Every time it's central and it keeps pulling in, it just makes things awkward. You can't really move. You don't have a reason to overall. It's like watching a high school dance. Everyone's just kind of littered around in different spaces. And no one really knows what to do. Do I walk up and say hello to someone? Do I bust a move? What's going on?
Tipo io nell'altro
exactly
torneo quando c'è la telecronaca così che ti
fanno
compare la cosa che
dance moves, a little bit of fanning going on, the high school dance all over, but right now we can see the zone is pulling kind of just towards the south. There's a little bit of change of verticality in that area, but it's the first time we've really seen the zone anywhere near the convergent Shio, and the late games the situation can be a little awkward as the building does get weird at times.
Loro devono pregare solamente che ma non credo, perché sicuramente si chiuderà verso il semifinals non credo proprio, però ragazzi se la Sette si chiude qua io lo dico, oddio intanto Axsport si lascia le pennacce e lo rivediamo nel prossimo gioco. Oddio, le buttano? Ma come fanno? Cioè leva tantissimo, perché il fight qua? Questi qua se non ti lasciano le pallate che c'hanno la macchina. Ok, hanno la macchina.
Keep beaming people and the ground will just always be right under your feet and higher than everywhere.
Oddio ragazzi, ma quelli là, cioè che cazzo hanno fightato là, ma seriamente?
Gives you plenty of line of sight to be able to rain down on the lobby, and again, line of sight in the exact same spot they always are.
Ragazzi, non devono sperare niente perché sono
just a random box right in the middle of the zone on the low ground in the south corner of the zone. Like it's so weird that they haven't been shot at once. It's not like people don't know where they are. They've done the same thing every single game. But I mean, they just get plenty of room to do it, and you can see the key on their positioning is too. It might look completely random, but they're not necessarily in the direct line of fire from the people who are in power positions, right? They create enough of a distance where like those teams up there, yeah, they could shoot at them, but they're just going to be able to throw a cone of floor above their head. The top angle really get the spray onto the wall, which is where you want the damage, and then on top of it, they get great lines of sight on everyone else who needs to rotate into the zone. So it just sets them up to really. I don't want to say they don't have to play the game until kind of the fifth zone in the moving circles, but it's so formulaic beforehand that you just are kind of going through the motions, and that's what happens when you practice this so much. You just leave it down to the high level of execution. I mean, if anybody can execute,
I'm just so confused as to how they're not running into any teams to get to this point. Like a perfect example of a corruption so far has been Aquas. They were trying to move past the convergence. One team saw that changed their whole game plan. They're not going to be on height this time. Snako sneak off at Egram. This is exactly where they land too. So I hope that they do have control of this entire area, but it's like, how are City Community allowed to just move around as much as possible? Is it super early? Like,
380
the chunk is up the IO cars. So we talk about it, the IO cars when you're rotating through, they are a little bit faster when you're able to go. They're more efficient when you get through in terms of the gas, but you see those chunkers all over the place, and you might think, oh wow, those are just tires. Those are great. I guess I could use them to like break some ball damage or something. No, if you get chunkers, throw them on whatever car you're rotating on. It makes getting over these mountains, gets over the hills. You lose no damage. You get a ton of extra extra distance. And again, they subscribe to the theory of you either go super early or go super late, except they never go super late. It's always super early. They're always inside the zone way ahead of time, and they play from the middle of the zone. They don't care if they get half and half out, drop directly on top of the head. They basically head towards the southern middle part of the zone, and they play from there. So this is the part in time where now they actually have to start making decisions. Otherwise, they do the exact same thing. Otherwise, and it's been working. It's perfect.
Yeah, and the decisions they're making aren't as complicated as everyone else. They're always by themselves.
Look
at Aqua. 7 different teams around him. Yeah, he pulled zone 2, so some of his options are basically solved for him overall, but Resetti, Kemi, and Teak, they're usually 1,000 damage almost above Surge. They just primarily focus on position. It's just a free game for them overall. Aqua, though, I mean, just talked about his situation. It's looking kind of weird. The thing is, though, this is fine. These are actually games this trio does really well in when they start on low a little bit and then boost up and go for that retake on height.
But one thing to note, as we do talk about the tournament management mode, despite how Kami, Steady, and Teak are playing, their strategy in the way they get eliminations relies on them making it all the way through into the end game, right? They're not going to be picking up eliminations almost ever in the early and mid game unless they're manufacturing the ones that we've seen in Storm Surge that we've talked about a few times, where they kind of post up next to a team who they reliably think might be underneath it, and they take that fight if they have the advantage. Other than that, they don't really pick them up. Whereas these other teams are putting themselves in the zone, as we saw Hellfire picking up yet another elimination. So they do have the opportunity to close the gap that way. Noah Riley getting a knock onto Pink. We do have Storm Surge coming through. We have Reason Taste trying to find a little bit of room. Jerky also up on the high ground. He's got a Noscar rifle directly behind him. Excuse me, Kinzo posted up. We're going to swing back on over. Yeah, they're sitting on 3 eliminations, but Hellfire is down. Flonata, very low HP. They're actually going to be able to pull him back and be forced to use jump slashes early on. It's going to take a ton of damage. He's going to get harpooned back into Flonata, maybe potentially able to save him, but down to a solo and a duo, and instead looks like he's going to leave him.
Every top team has to risk it all for their positions. They're in trouble. Some of their teammates are down. They don't have the spot they want to be in. Meanwhile, Steady, Kemi, and Teak, we're talking about gaps over and over again. They're still keeping it wide open by themselves on a perfect lair, uninterrupted. If they do well this game, they can eclipse 300 points, which is a threshold some FNCS winners have never hit before. In game 2 of day 2.
I mean,
ragazzi,
is it I don't want to say is it too early to call it, but like if they get a win, I'm like, do we start celebrating now? Like,
pay attention to the bottom left number whenever we go to their trio. If it hits 70 points or somewhere near 80 this game, I feel like it's already wraps. That being said, though, there's so many different teams flying up in the sky. They're going to survive for a long time. It's not the same situation as last game where there was so many teams dropping all the way towards very end, a lot of solos. There are organized trio clusters all around, 18 teams, 45 players. The math almost adds up perfectly, and now the shots are coming through from Adil, Janice, and Noah Riley. They're already at, what is this, 11 eliminations?
Ma guarda, FCS, se sei disponibile per farlo, le
they just
possiamo
got
fare
2 more knocks there
tranquillamente.
on that rotation, so they're saying, hey, we got nothing to
Se
lose.
sei
We've been
disponibile per farle,
battling it out
le possiamo
every
fare, però
single game
ovviamente
off and
no,
drop with this
perché
over at the
ora
beach.
sto
They
castando
just fought
l'ultima
the trio.
partita
They came
del
to the day in
FNCS e
second
poi
place, but
stacco.
now Noah
Cioè no,
Riley says,
l'ultima, però
I need a little
per
bit
me
of that
l'ultima.
best fighter in EU talk going back to my name. It's been awful quiet for a while, so let's pump the volume up. Give me the soundbite Sundown, but it doesn't matter. Because we talk about all
Power,
this, look at the low
se
ground,
sei
look at the
hai
hip
tutti i
to hip,
requisiti che
the entire
richiede,
time
cioè
priority
perché comunque
position,
ci gioco,
building
sei te
out
che non ci
with
dovresti
metal, they're
giocare.
gonna low pad to
Sei
end
te
up
che
just
dovresti
taking
avere
a small
tipo
amount
tutti
of
i
space,
requisiti
just make
che
sure
non
that they
giochi,
don't
per
end
te
up
dovresti stare
extending there,
che non
because
giochi.
there's no other time they're gonna end up using it, and they're gonna go up above the convergence. This rotation is gonna be so hard for everyone who's behind them. That's why they wanted to make sure they're in the front. As Janice picks yet another elimination onto Vettel, Storms are still hamming away. Rodeo picks up another one, I believe that's 16 there,
un'ora di
pushing
gioco lo
on. We can
faccio in
potentially see a
mezzo
20
secondo,
elimination
nel
game
senso,
coming out from them.
voglio dire.
Tripper ends up getting the confirmation onto Rifle. Still one full trio, end
Un'ora
up
di
being hit
gioco
by
perché ce
Storm
l'ho
Surge
io
at
in
least. You can see a
un
shot
giorno.
does come through in terms of the charge with the edit, but no confirmation as they continue rotating up towards the convergence.
Every team is trying to play catch up to a moving target that's better, faster, and stronger.
Che mi devi dire?
It's going
Che
all
mi
the
devi
way
dire,
up
tanto
to
non
the
ti sento
skies,
da
maybe
dove.
even the
Sì, ti sento, ma ti sentivo anche prima. Che mi devi dire, tanto non ti sento dallo
They
stream.
might be able to get that revive too if they play their cards right. If they do go for that though, it's only going to be 2 dropping down the pressure. He goes for a reconnect as well. They have to give Kiriachi a little bit of a letdown. A big chop is going to come through. So Red still has his footing. It's looking good. Aqua is the one that actually take down Kiriachi. Is this a second shot that might come through as well? I'm
non
not
lo
sure,
so,
but Aqua's definitely in the situation.
Mercoledì, giovedì, non lo so.
Maybe play for retake. The launch pads will come.
Ma tutta la settimana comunque ci alleniamo, non è che già da lunedì, martedì, mercoledì tutti i giorni, frate, perché io voglio puntare a arrivare, cioè a vincere proprio, voglio puntare, essendo che solo no, sì vecchio, cioè non voglio trollarlo, ti giuro, non voglio trollare neanche mezzo game perché ci tengo a giocare bene questa Cup in modo particolare, non la voglio giocare stra bene, mi voglio qualificare e basta. Voglio studiarmi, poi ci mettiamo una sera, non so quando, un pomeriggio e ci studiamo un land perfetto, cioè ci mettiamo tutti quanti come si chiama, col PC. Sì, ci deve essere tutta la 3, mi metto col PC, la presento e vediamo dove possiamo andare. Sì, vediamo. Ci dobbiamo allenare qua tutta la settimana perché voglio fare un buon punteggio. Abbiamo le possibilità sia a livello di essere forti, a livello di tutto, di king, di tutte cose. Perciò non voglio uscire al primo girone perché non voglio uscire neanche all'ultimo. Voglio proprio voglio winnare qualcosa. No, non mi voglio qualificare, voglio vincere proprio.
The same way we've seen them take apart so many competitions just as a duo sometimes, a solo sometimes. They're used to being champions. Benji, Fishy, Savage, and
no, non... Oddio. Ok. Non ti posso buttare fuori, tranquillo. Devi uscire tu. Ragazzi, qua il pick ci lascia le pennacci. Il predaggio, ragazzi, inizia a fare kill. Sì, tranquillo.
No!
Ragazzi, qua la kill, il selvaggio, ragazzi. Qua il selvaggio, il bang.
Said he will not get the med shit off and will get second place there, but still, as a duo, we talked about it. Their worst placements have been a 7th and a 1st, an 8th, and a 5th. Well, I'm sure they will take a second to continue rocking it up there, but Benji, Fishy, and Dretta and Savage take away match number 8 there with a little bit of shenanigans towards the end, a little bit of...
Il Bengione, il selvaggio e l'Endretta. Hanno winnato. Endretta. Comunque dai, sto staccando, ci sentiamo, non lo so, dopo stasera, non lo so. Domani, vediamo. Ciao.